Hello, I'm going to talk about how the zodiac sign Cancer affects relationships. So, if you are in a relationship with somebody who has a lot of the zodiac sign Cancer when they were born, in this video I will talk about things that are likely to come up in the relationship and how you can best deal with them. And the emphasis of this presentation is on close relationships, like close friendships, and also romantic and marriage partners. So the zodiac signs, the tropical zodiac signs, they show how we approach life. I will get into that in more detail, what I mean by how we approach life, as we proceed in this presentation. But for now, just keep that phrase in mind. Zodiac signs show how we approach life. And how we approach life, this lens through which we see things, this orientation to life, has a big effect on relationships. So one of the places where we see strong effects from zodiac signs is in close personal relationships. So what do I mean by being born with strong zodiac sign Cancer when you're born? One example is the rising sign. The rising sign is incredibly important. So if somebody has Cancer rising, Cancer is strong. It's that simple. Also the sun sign and the moon signs are important. And the next planet to consider is Venus, especially in terms of relationships. So rising sign is really the strongest in some ways. It shows what's important for you to express. And the sun, moon, and Venus signs, towards the end of this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about how they work differently. But that gives you an idea of what we mean by strong zodiac sign in the birth chart. So before I get into the details of what happens in relationships and what you can do to help the relationships work well, let's do two things. First, let's review some of the common ideas about Cancer, and then let me give you some new ideas about how the zodiac sign Cancer actually works, and then we'll finally get to how the zodiac sign Cancer functions in relationships. So we've got to build some foundational material. So number one, what are some of the common ideas about Cancer? Well, one of the things we hear is it's domestic. It's family-oriented. Cancer, you also hear things like Cancer has excellent parenting instincts. Again, things connected to home and family. We also read that Cancer is emotionally sensitive and their feelings are easily hurt, that it's intuitive and psychic, sympathetic. There are negative tendencies of smothering, being moody, and prone to brooding. There can also be problems of being dominated by others and being overly accommodating, and also that Cancer is very focused on their personal lives, and perhaps too much so. So those are some of the common ideas. You might be able to think of a few others, but I think that captures some of the essential ideas about Cancer, and the first one being that it's very domestic, very family and home oriented. I just wanted to go over that because a lot of people watching this come in with those ideas about it. Now, are they true? I think there's some elements of truth to those ideas. They're not completely off, but I think there's a better way of understanding them. And the ideas I'm going to present you come from three areas of research and involvement with astrology that I've had. Number one, way back in the 1970s, so I'm older probably than most of you watching this. Way back in the 1970s, I interviewed and consulted thousands of people just to find out what astrology is, how it works, what's going on. So I did a lot of interviews. I also did a lot of reading and study with other people, but those interviews provided a foundation for my understanding. Then, much later, going into the 1990s, the 2000s, 2010s, I'm doing extreme case sampling studies. We have a database in our software. I'm one of the developers of the Kepler and Sirius astrology software. We have a huge database in there and research features, and we go through and we find the people who have, say, a zodiac sign, like Cancer, the strongest, and do they match what we expect? What do we find out? And then the third thing is we apply the ideas when we do people's charts, which is what most astrologers do. They just look at charts. It's that third part. But what I've done is also very vitally important is step number 2, a data-driven approach. It's part of our evidence-based astrology. So I just wanted to give you some background as to where the ideas come from. And according to vibrational astrology, which is the system of astrology that I practice, each zodiac sign describes an attitude towards life. It's not really this as above, so below thing where Aries is in your face and aggressive and Taurus is stubborn, and you have all these images and adjectives that we associate with the signs. The signs are more about a process and an attitude. Aries, for example, is about being honest and having integrity. I've already made a video about all 12 zodiac signs and the research results, and I've made videos about the first 3 zodiac signs in terms of relationships, and this is the 4th one. So Taurus is on a process of unfolding from within, and Gemini is about being curious. You can watch those other videos on the zodiac signs to go into more detail. But it's a process, it's an attitude, it's a set of assumptions that the person has about life, and an instinctive prioritizing of what's most important. So what is Cancer really about? This is what Cancer does according to our research, and it's the ideas that we use in vibrational astrology. Cancer creates a cosmic egg. This cosmic egg is a place where we are protected. The cosmic egg is permeable. It's not a solid wall. It's just like a house that has doors and windows. So Cancer is domestic. But why is Cancer domestic? Because it's part of the Cancer process of creating this egg, this safe space. So the philosophical assumption of Cancer, a non-verbal, instinctive assumption, is here we are in the world. First of all, we're born, and we are completely vulnerable without the protection of the mother and anybody else, the father or other people that support and help the baby. The baby's, sad to say, is not even going to survive. And the emotional support as well as physical support, we're all vulnerable. And even as adults, we are vulnerable. We need closeness. We need strengthening. We need protection. If you can feel that view of life, that's the instinctive assumption of Cancer. So why is Cancer domestic? Because domesticity, a home, is a clear expression of the cosmic egg. But when you understand Cancer as building this shell, think of the zodiac signs as stages in life. And in the zodiac sign Cancer, we're at this stage of developing this shell to protect what's being born, to realize there's cold and rain and snow, and there are people out there who are not, who are criminals and will steal things. We have to make a safe space. So that's what the zodiac sign Cancer is really about at an instinctive level. It's not that the Cancerian people can state that or know that or articulate it and objectify their experience clearly, but underneath the surface of things, that's what happens. Now, an interesting thing about building this protective egg that we all have, we're all adults and have survived because we had a mom and other people that took care of us, is that eventually we leave the cosmic egg as we grow up, but we still need protection. We still need support. We still have a home, and we may become parents to our children. So this whole process of protecting, of building a close-knit, we'll call it family or tribe, is part of the Cancerian process. So it is the Cancerian process. So the interpretation of Cancer that's usually given is, it's accurate. It's good. What helps, however, is to think of it as a process, because once you do that, you're going to see many of the things that I'm going to talk about that are not obvious about Cancer, some of which contradict the image of Cancer, because when you actually think about what Cancer is doing, it leads to different awarenesses of what's going on. So we're going to get some new ideas, and then finally we'll get to exactly what happens in personal relationships. So I have 2 points here. Number one, Cancer does thrive on intimacy, family, and people who are part of their personal world. We all know that about Cancer. That's true, that's correct. Now this may not be so obvious. Cancer, in other words, a person who has a lot of Cancer, like Cancer rising, will join an inner city gang, play American football, join the military, go to war against what it perceives as a threat. Now, those are things we don't usually think about with Cancer, because we have this image that Cancer is this soft, nurturing, pleasant, non-aggressive energy. But that's actually not Cancer. We've generalized beyond what Cancer does. Cancer does one thing. It builds a cosmic egg to protect us. That's all it's doing. And any way that Cancer can achieve intimacy and closeness, it will do it. So if a person comes from a home where there is not enough closeness and bonding and support, and Cancer needs more than most people do, it's a high priority, even though they aren't usually not consciously aware of it, that person, if they live in a city where there are gangs, becomes likely to enter a gang, because then you have your little ways of shaking hands, you have your club, you have your intimacy, you have your closeness. So Cancer just wants the closeness. And sports, even if they have an element of violence, you'll see a lot of Cancerian people involved in playing or enjoying football. When I say football, I'm talking about American football, not soccer, but any sport, any team sport. But American football is very Cancerian, because the guys get together in a huddle and they're kind of like hugging each other, and there's just that close-knit group feeling. And the military is a large family to protect the country. So you'll find Cancer very frequently involved in the military. So Cancer is not soft, meek, mild. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. And what happens when astrologers do the birth chart and they see the Cancerian person and they're not so meek and mild, then they say, oh, well, look at Mars, look at this, there's an explanation for it. But part of the explanation is the nature of Cancer itself. Cancer is not necessarily that soft. There is a softness deep inside, and many military people and football players and other people have there is a softness inside. But Cancer wants to protect, and that's all often requires effort and a strength and to stand up and go against things. So it will do it. Also, you often build closeness when there is a threat. So when people are threatened, we huddle together for safety. Sometimes Cancer actually likes the threats, not consciously, but they like it because it builds that closeness with it, that's needed to stay safe against the threat. Closeness within the family. And family can be like the nuclear family, it can be the club, it can be the gang. Cancerians are often very patriotic because the country is also something they identify with as sharing the same values and being protected from other nations. Okay. So let's look at those descriptions that I gave, those typical descriptions of Cancer from the vibrational astrology point of view, from this point of view of how I've just described the zodiac sign Cancer. Let's go over this quickly. Is Cancer domestic and family oriented? True, but keep in mind that the family might be an inner city gang, a small music group, a clique, and other things. Does Cancer have excellent parenting instincts? Is this true? This is not consistently true. What is true is Cancer usually is motivated to parent, to protect. Now, sometimes Cancer does not want to be a parent. They don't want to be a mom and dad because they know how much work it is, and they don't want to invest that much energy into protecting a few people. So the instinct to want to protect and build a cosmic egg is there, and it will come out in different ways, but no one particular expression will always happen. So usually Cancer is motivated to want to parent or tutor or guide, be an aunt or an uncle or a father or a mother, something like that. Usually, I would say the majority of the time that's true, the great majority of the time. But are they actually good at it? There's a difference between being motivated and being good. So sometimes they're good parents. Sometimes they are they are smothering. They are overly worried. They are overly protective. They're almost like paranoid and worried, or they're putting too much emphasis on feeding the children and having a nice house and having dinner together, but not really going deeper than that, not really listening, not developing good communication skills. So are they have excellent parenting instincts? Well, they have parenting motivation. The skills vary. Okay. Is Cancer emotionally sensitive and have easily hurt feelings? It is emotionally sensitive. That's true. Does Cancer easily have hurt feelings? Well, this has a negative connotation. And the positive side of it is that Cancer brings our attention to the emotional and personal quality of relationships. That's the key. Let me say it again. Cancer brings our attention to the emotional and personal quality of relationships. Because in building this cosmic egg and this protected area, there's an intimacy and a closeness. And Cancer is very intuitive and very sensitive and puts a high priority on that. So yes, in a way, Cancer does have easily hurt feelings because it's placing importance on feelings. By the way, I don't know if you can hear that. It just started raining here. If you can and you hear some, no, it faded out. It might come in and out. Okay, but if you hear that sound, I don't know if you do. That's what it is. So do you see the difference there? When you say that Cancer has easily hurt feelings, it's kind of this as above, so below. Oh, they have Cancer, their feelings are easily hurt. Oh, well, that's it. What can you expect from Cancer? And then you don't really appreciate it, you don't understand it, you don't know what to do about it. But if you realize the reason for it is because they're putting more emphasis on the importance of the vibration, the quality, the bondedness. And these things are important. So, keep that in mind. Each zodiac sign brings a truth, and when you understand the truth of it, it helps sort things out. Okay, now another thing that's said about Cancer is that they're intuitive and psychic. Well, this is in some ways true, in some ways false. Cancer is intuitive. They get a lot of intuitive impressions, but it's often biased by personal experiences and beliefs. And also, Cancer's intuition is usually directed within that cosmic egg. They're often intuitive and sensitive to people they are close to people they are not close to, haven't made a friendship with and a close connection. There's sometimes actually a lack of intuition, a lack of understanding. They're not connecting. So in certain circumstances, Cancer is very intuitive and psychic, And in other circumstances, they are not. And one of the big problems of Cancer is that they will have intuitive, sometimes precognitive experiences, like they dreamed that their grandmother became very ill, and then the next morning, yes, she's very ill. They have these psychic experiences, and then they generalize, and they think that their opinions about politics and other things are, that they can trust their intuition on everything. And sometimes they're not looking at the data, the information as clearly. So it's a double-edged sword with intuition and sensitivity. Cancer needs to work on clarity and openness and a broad sense of connectedness with everything before it becomes a really good intuitive. I hope that makes sense to you, and you can see that with your Cancerian friends and people you're close to. They often do sense what's going on with their loved ones right away, but their views of, say, politics or world history or things like that sometimes gets biased by their association with whatever they consider to be their tribe, their family. Are they sympathetic? They are sympathetic, same thing. They're sympathetic with people they feel comfortable with. If they're not comfortable with the person, they often shut them out. So it's a selective sympathy. And one of the ways that Cancer develops is by broadening its sensitivity to larger and larger levels. That's part of the evolution of Cancer. Negative tendencies of smothering and being moody, prone to brooding. These are negative tendencies. It very much depends on the culture and the circumstances. Different cultures, different historical periods, the area that we grow up in, is going to have certain values, lifestyle, expectations, the way we function. We have to have, rules and regulations and, a lot of things in place for society to work. That's good. And whether Cancer tends to have these negative tendencies or not really depends on context. A culture that emphasizes the strength of the immediate nuclear family, that immediate family, and maybe says that the mother is most responsible for it, then all of the pressure is put on her to do this vitally important function of holding that family and doing most of the nurturing. So in a case like that, all of that gets placed on one or two people, and you're asking them to specialize to such an extent that you get these extreme behaviors and tendencies, and tendency to smothering and the emotional stress and focus on it. So it depends on context. It depends on how things develop for the person, but it can happen. Now, being dominated by others and being very accommodating, this is sometimes just the opposite. You will see both extremes with Cancer. Cancer can be just the opposite. Not accommodating. They can have very strong views. They don't need to voice them that much or argue about it until you threaten their safety. But if you threaten their safety, so Cancer typically has strong motivation and takes strong action in regards to things like police, military, things like that, very often not willing to back down, and they will protect them. They lock all the doors and they take action, and they often will report people that look suspicious, etc. So no, that's not really true. There are certain situations where Cancer is quiet and meek, but there are other situations where it tends not to be. So overall, if you have 10 people with strong Cancer, I don't think you're going to find that 7 or 8 of them are consistently tending to be more passive. That's an image. That's actually not that true, believe it or not. If you're an astrologer and you're, accustomed to these ideas, check it out. Look more carefully at what's going on. Okay, very focused on their personal lives. This is generally true because the focus is on the family. The family can get defined and redefined as a person gets older, starting out as your immediate family, then your close friends, clubs that you join. Sometimes people identify strongly with their nation, and some people even focus on the human family. I would say in most cases Cancer doesn't go that far, and it does feel strongly identified with certain heritages and people that they're intimately connected with, because that's the function of Cancer, to create that protected egg. One of the advancements for Cancer is when they see the whole Earth as needing protection, it does help be more inclusive. Otherwise, Cancer tends to have this me and them tendency, and to keep itself separate, which doesn't, it's just not healthy. I mean, it doesn't help the world work better when you're seeing an other, like there's us and them. That's a strong tendency for a lot of people with Cancer, and evolving to beyond that, you might say, while still, while you protect the whole Earth, you also protect your children, you protect your immediate family. It doesn't deny that, and Cancer is always important and good at that as well. Okay, now, relating to someone with strong Cancerian, to someone who's a strong Cancerian person, so your relationship to a strong Cancerian person. Number one, be ready for strong feelings and opinions about their family, their ethnicity, their country, their tribe, and also topics like motherhood. So we don't think of Cancer as being opinionated, having a strong point of view and being sensitive about certain things, but typically it is. So be aware of that. And what can help you is a kind of meditative thought that those people that nurtured us from infancy, they gave us not only the ability to survive physically, they gave us the myths, the dreams, our soul, everything that protects us. We really do need to respect and appreciate our heritage, our family, our nation, our ethnicity, all of these things. And this is part of the Cancerian point of view. So appreciating where the person's coming from, because typically the person's not able to verbalize it. That's the wonderful thing about astrology, is that it makes conscious these instinctive tendencies that we're not always able to articulate. So realizing that can help. And like I said, often if your Cancerian partner feels very strongly about strong police force, strong military, sometimes they vacillate between wanting strong military and then feeling horrified by the harm that war and violence cause. These tend to be hot button areas for people with strong Cancer. Just be aware of it. They're building their cosmic egg. When you're able to put it in perspective, it helps you appreciate and understand it and deal with it. In a way, you're not going to remove their concern. You just want to help that concern function in a healthy and positive way. Okay, so more on your relationship with a strong Cancerian person. Be ready. This is an important one. Excuse me. Be ready for activities that might be compromising on ethics, ecology. They might be inconsistent. They may not be completely logical when the topic involves protecting and caring for a family or tribe. Let me give you an example. Say it's a holiday and you visit your partner's family and you bring some gifts of food. It's common for Cancer to bring really unhealthy things that you ate as children, like loaded with sugar, whatever, and maybe, you guys know that this is really not the best thing to do. But Cancer wants to build that egg, that closeness, that protection. And of course, would actually protect them more to eat healthier food and not develop these habits, that are unhealthy. But it builds the intimacy, it builds the memories, the closeness, the connection. And so sometimes people with strong Cancer, will have strong values and behave certain ways, but they'll make exceptions. They get looser when it comes to family. So just be aware of it and understand where it's coming from. And don't just throw up your hands and go, "Oh my God, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with him? He's so strong about eating organic food, and then here he is at dinner eating all this junk and even buying it." Just understand it's a way of building the cosmic egg. This is something that comes up very often. Not necessarily. It's different possible things that happen because of one simple thing: protection, building a safe place. And it's not a safe place. Cancer is not looking for a safe place like a fort, with walls that are 6 feet wide, because Cancer realizes there's a world out there to interact with. Besides, if you built a 6-foot wall, you would not be safe because you wouldn't know what's going on out there. Okay, so do not be surprised if your Cancerian friend is not as consistently soft and passive. I've already talked about this. So I'm now in the context of relationships. If your Cancerian partner enjoys aggressive sports and confrontations, don't be surprised. I mean, some do, some do not. What I'm saying is that it's not really that relevant to Cancer as we think it is. We think if you're domestic, well, you're staying home, you must be a softie. No, you're staying home doesn't mean you're a softie. So they may not like aggressive sports and confrontations, or maybe they do. I don't think you're going to see any great tendency that they don't more than other zodiac signs. So just don't be surprised. Some Cancerians actually enjoy some level of aggressiveness or threat because it can build that strong intimacy and closeness. And another thing, the third thing, my bottom paragraph here, is that their feelings, it is true, we're told that Cancer is a water sign, it's emotional, and in a way that's true, that feelings work into the thoughts on any subject, whether it's social systems like education or anything else, anything political. It's never going to be entirely completely logical and rational analysis with Cancer. There's always this emotional element of are we building intimacy, closeness, and protection. Okay, so you can't always win an argument with a person by logic with Cancer. It just doesn't work that way. You have to feel the concern of the person. Now, this is surprising because we're often told that Cancer is a little bit soft, sometimes lacks confidence. Cancer can lack confidence when there's difficulty growing up and they don't get the emotional support. And some people, I know some astrologers, they act like everybody is, damaged goods, like we're all damaged from child. Well, nothing's perfect, but there are a lot of people who have an overall fairly healthy, functional childhood, and those Cancerian people who do, they're often very confident. So don't be surprised if your Cancerian partner is very confident, not meek and easily pushed around. And in fact, Cancer is very often inflexible on particular issues. So on a day-to-day things, they, no problem. They're flexible enough. What do you want for dinner? Okay, that's fine with me. They're not stubborn overall, but you get to certain topics, and all of a sudden they have a strong opinion. So Cancer has like buzzers. They have little sensitive spots where they have a very strong opinion, And they may, very often it can be a political opinion or a worldview opinion, or even something that's scientific, about the value of a certain kind of diet. And they'll just say, oh, that diet's nonsense. And you often can even wonder, like, how did they conclude this when they all have the education and training? They should know better. But it will sometimes develop strong opinions. So if you're with a Cancerian person, you have a close friendship or family member or romantic marriage, just be aware that there are going to be certain topics, and they'll even quote data, to support their point of view. And, they'll often refer to how many times they were right in the past, and they have a good intuition. Remember, some Cancerian people believe they're more psychic or intuitive than they really are, because they are in certain areas. So just be ready for this for several reasons. Cancer can have very strong opinions. And again, it's not everything, but it's very, very common. So be ready for it, and just realize that there's a lot of emotion behind this, and you always has to do with something about being safe, being protected, about being healthy, and having a strong family. That's what it's related to. And there's almost an element of fear that can, well, let's put it this way. Fear easily creeps in to the Cancerian point of view, and then it becomes a little irrational because it's afraid. So just be aware that this often happens. You don't hear about it, you don't read about it, but it's true, it happens. Here's another thing that happens with strong Cancer that you don't hear a lot about, is money. Cancer is more interested in money more often than Taurus is. Taurus is supposed to be about money and tangible assets. Surprise, surprise. Cancer more often is concerned about money and tangible assets than Taurus is. Believe it or not, check out your clients, check out your friends. As if you're an astrologer, keep count the next 10 strong Cancer clients, strong Taurus clients, especially if they're strong Cancer and not Taurus, and vice versa, and see what's actually happening, and see if you really have to go all over the chart to explain it. It can be right in your face, and we've been missing it. Investing in home, tangible assets, and money are handled with care, sensitivity, and practical. So we're told Cancer is a water sign, it's all emotional. Well, I just gave you examples of where that emotion works in very strongly. But when it comes to protection, that's Cancer's strong point. They're experts at it. They know how to protect. They may go overboard, and often they do, but they get good at some of the mechanics of it. So they often, they have that nest egg, they have that money for retirement, they're often smart and shrewd about how to do things. They will buy a house rather than rent an apartment because over time it will work better, because these are all things that help protect, especially if they're married or have other dependents. Then they have somebody to take care of in addition to themselves. It becomes very strong. So be ready for it. Be ready when your Cancerian partner says, oh, we should, let's live in a smaller apartment. It won't be that bad. We'll save some money, then we can get a house. And this person who normally is not that, grounded or focused on the practical world is talking like a business executive, financial expert, an accountant, and so on. Don't be surprised. It's standard. Now, maybe, Cancerians can be accountants and so on just as well as anybody else. But even if they're not, they tend to get very practical about these tangible assets. Why? Just keep it simple. What does Cancer want? It wants a cosmic egg. Don't think domestic motherhood, blah, 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 blah. Those are just symptoms of building a cosmic egg. So that's what they do, and people do their process better than other people. And like I said, sometimes it gets carried away. they save more money than they really need to, things like that. But still, they're very, very good at it. Doesn't always happen. No one particular thing does always happen. So you may have a strong Cancerian marriage partner, or romantic partner, whatever, close friend, and you may say, well, 80 to 90% of what David said is true, 10 to 20% is wrong. Exactly. That's how it works, because these are just different ways of developing the cosmic egg, and people develop different structures. Also, people change over time. So don't be surprised if you're married to someone for 20 years and all of a sudden they start developing an interest in investments and things like this. They've become aware of another part of really making a good cosmic egg. So people change, but often the theme is the same. And the theme for Cancer is making that cosmic egg. Now, in the romantic side of a relationship with a Cancerian, keep in mind that falling in love, having moonlight walks on the beach, you're madly in love with each other, it's very romantic, there's great sexual chemistry, this is the most wonderful thing in the world. Keep in mind, and maybe you also work together very well on projects, so it's like everything's great. You're romantic, the sexual connection's great, you're able to do things well, you communicate well, it seems perfect. But just remember that with Cancer, we say Cancer is a cardinal sign, but in certain areas there's a fixed quality. And Cancer's looking to build that cosmic egg. A cosmic egg is something you build that's solid and that's there. Intimacy, family. You're not going to be protected if you're changing every day, if you're running around loose. So there's often a sense of devotion, of loyalty, of commitment with Cancer. And also what happens when the going gets rough. So I have here that this lovey-dovey feeling must continue when the going gets rough. And the bond must continue when life is not easy. Taking care of each other is a kind of commitment. So even though Cancer is a cardinal sign, there is a kind of tenacity in certain areas of life, and specifically what I'm talking about in this close bonding. So it's another thing to be aware of, is when you bond with a Cancerian person this closely, you are now not just lovers and romantic partners, you're family, you're part, and you take care of each other. So they will take care of you, and you need to take care of them. Don't just think about, being beautiful and pretty and all this stuff. Think about, are they stressed at work? Are they feeling okay? What's going on? Taking care of each other, building the cosmic egg. Last thing, I think this is the last thing I want to say. Oh, yeah, just 2 more slides. Generational changes, people born between roughly 1914 and 1938. I say roughly because Pluto can go retrograde, so for a few years it is on the cusp and can go in and out. But roughly 1914 to 1938, Pluto was in Cancer. People born during that time period overall are very Cancerian. Family, the family you grew up in, the family that you create by getting married, played a very dominant role. And there are always individuals who are out of sync with the generation. But overall, that was the emphasis, that was the way. If you think about it, you can think of many, many examples of how that plays out in people's lives. So I just want to mention that. And then people born after 1938, which is, at this point, almost all of us. But just looking back historically, and when I get to Leo, Virgo, Libra, with the next videos on relationships, then we'll be talking more about people who are alive and active more today. But those generations just before us, that you can see that and how it changed. Why did it change? Is it just the progress of modern society? It's also that Pluto went out of Cancer and then into Leo with the me generation, okay? And then into Virgo and so on. Okay. Anyway, so you can see that there. I just thought I'd mention that. So last thing, if you have Cancer rising, people are sensitive about their rising sign. It's important The rising sign is not just a mask. It's something you're trying to develop and express. So keep in mind, if a person has Cancer rising, these issues tend to be sensitive and important. It's a motivation. The sun sign is a way of being. You're in your element. So if your sun sign is Cancer, if your marriage partner, romantic partner, close friend, it has sun in Cancer, this is just their natural way of being. With the rising sign, you have to be even a little more careful and support it more. The rising sign needs to be supported and encouraged and developed. So you want to help your partner with that if they have Cancer rising. The moon sign is instinctive. It's just instinctive, built in, and deep. Do not violate a person's moon sign ever. So if the moon is in Cancer, if you disrespect that person's tradition, their heritage, their family, their brothers and sisters, their parents, and you disrespect it, you don't appreciate it, boom. The distance between you can just become enormous very quickly. So just remember, moon sign is deep. It's not always talked about, but it runs very deep. And Venus is what is attractive. So people with Venus in Cancer are attracted to Cancer. So they are attracted to people who are part of a strong family. It might not be the family they grew up with, but a tightly knit group of friends who connect like family. You might say the tribe. So they are drawn to people who are rooted in a supportive environment, not just, free, independent agents. And sometimes people don't do what's best for them. A person with Venus in Cancer marries someone who is a bit of a loner, doesn't have a strong support group, isn't really protecting anybody, and it feels empty. It feels like something's missing. So Venus shows what's attractive and beautiful to us. So there's some ideas about Cancer to think about when we understand the zodiac signs a little more deeply and sensitively about what's really going on. It can really help us target exactly what's going on. Okay, thank you very much, my friends. Thank you for listening and watching this. God bless. Namaste.